How many of y'all have experienced or know someone who has experienced a knee injury? Take a second to think about the impact of this injury. As a former athlete, I know how detrimental injuries can be and how important it is to know what to do when we endure one of those. We also need to know the measures we can take to prevent them. Most athletes' biggest fear is a knee injury. Many knee injuries can ruin an athlete's career. Marcus Lattimore, for example, tore ligaments in his knee, which prohibited him from furthering his career. Before we talk about knee injuries, it is important to understand the knee as a joint. In this picture here, we can see some different ligaments of the knee. At the top, we have the femur, which comes in right here, which is the largest bone of the body. And as we move down, we see the patella. This is a free-floating bone that is sometimes referred to as a kneecap. Then we see the meniscus. And the meniscus is very easy to injure. This picture also shows the ACL right here, which I'm sure we all know is every athlete's biggest fear to tear. Next, I would like to discuss some of the things athletes can do to prevent the knee injury. First, it is extremely important that athletes, especially runners, wear appropriate shoes. When runners do not wear the correct shoes, their knees and ankles are not supported as they should be. One obvious way to prevent any injuries is any kind of proper diet. If we don't take care of our bodies like we're supposed to, our bodies are deprived of the nutrients they need. We have to make sure that we eat enough and that the foods that we eat provide us with strength and energy. It is also essential that we give our bodies enough water. Lastly, we need to make sure our correct techniques when we exercise. Weightlifters, for example, must make sure that their knees are correctly aligned when squatting, deadlifting, and hang cleaning. Turning the knees in or out can result in serious injury because your knees are not supported by the rest of your body when they are not aligned properly. Cheerleaders and gymnasts also must focus heavily on their technique to prevent knee injuries. When tumbling or jumping, they must bend their knees to absorb the landing. Failing to do so is very harmful to the knees. Proper technique is important in every sport, but those are just two specific examples. Now we can begin to consider different knee injuries. First, let's talk about ligament tears. The knee is composed of several ligaments, all of which can be injured. But today I'm going to focus on ACL because it is the most common injury among athletes. ACL tears usually happen when a person tries to turn quickly while their foot is still planted on the ground. The injury is very common among basketball players and football players. I would say that is so common within those sports because of the fact that they are grounded and will constantly have to change directions. Another common knee injury is bursitis. This happens when the bursa sac in the knee becomes inflamed, which causes pain. Pain is most commonly felt across the kneecap. Bursitis can sometimes happen over time because it is usually caused by overuse or sustained pressure on the knee. The last injury I want to discuss today is the knee dislocation. This is probably one of the most painful knee injuries. This injury happens when the tibia and femur come out of alignment because the knee is surrounded by a bunch of ligaments. It is easy for the knee to dislocate if the ligaments around the knee are torn. This injury usually happens from traumatic injury. So how are knee injuries treated? Well, it really just depends on what kind of knee injury you have and the severity of it. Some knee injuries, like ACL tears, for example, are so serious that they require surgery. Others can be treated with RICE. RICE stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevations. These can help ease the pain of the knee injury, but when it is extremely severe, when it isn't extremely severe. Lastly, some injuries can be helped using braces and other like bandages and stuff like that. Although that this is not necessarily considered a treatment, it can help players return to play because it lessens the pain of compressing the injury. After considering all the information I have given you today, I hope I informed you about the knee and possible knee injuries. Thank you.